Parents didn't know until they were called to the school because the child had attempted suicide at school after living a double life for 3 months and meeting privately with the school counselor to support and to endorse this male identity.
My goal with this show is to translate my hard-earned experience into tools and tactics to help you become stronger as a man. This is the BraveCo podcast. I'm your host, Jason Valentin. Welcome back, everyone, to the BraveCo podcast. This week, I have a woman. Her name's Vernadette Broyles, who is incredible. She came into Bethel Church senior leadership team, which I'm on the senior leadership team at Bethel Church. Some of you may not know that. She came in and started to share her heart and what she does for kids and for parents and for education. And she's fighting for kids and for parents in a way that I feel is so incredibly important. And I really wanted to bring her on here. Vernadette is an experienced family law litigator and guardian ad litem, representing the best interests of children in court, and has been an advocate for student privacy, parental rights, and a whole bunch of other things. And so I know, Vernadette, that I didn't do your bio any justice, but would you come and just clean it up a little bit and share a little bit about what you do? And then we're going to dive deep into the details. And hopefully my goal today, for those of you that are listening, my goal is that you would understand what's happening in the world with kids, with the LGBTQ movement, how parents are losing their rights, how to protect your kids, and how to educate yourself in order to help to protect your family. So thank you, Vernadette, so much for coming on here.
Absolutely, Jay. It's really great to be with you, and I love Bethel Church. What I shared with you is that I am the president and general counsel of an organization called the Child and Parental Rights Campaign. We're a non-profit public interest law firm. We have lawsuits all around the country where our entire mission is to protect children's well-being, to defend females, as well as parental rights against violations that are caused by gender ideology, institutionalized gender ideology, and it has crept into every facet of our society.
Mm-hmm.
And as you
Yeah.
know, when it does that, it demands adherence to a new belief system, a new worldwide belief system that basically that denies the created order, that denies the sexual binary of male and female, and requires a whole change of language in order to prop up its false claims.
Mm-hmm.
So we have lawsuits that are suing school districts around the country for secretly transitioning children behind the backs of parents. We have one particular lawsuit right now in just decided in the First Circuit Court of Appeals, where it was over the parents' express objections, so they continued to transition these children. So, and then we have cases in which we're defending parents against Child Protective Services. Well,
Can I set this up just a tiny bit?
absolutely.
Because when I went to school, I knew a couple kids that were either gay or bisexual, and I mean it wasn't super common, but it wasn't totally abnormal either. And because of what's happened in our world with COVID, what's happened in our world with, um, I think the legislation, but also the Biden administration, we've just seen the weaponization of the school system, of the court system, of laws, to where now what's starting to happen, you'd be best to explain this, but I just want to set it up, is if your kids go to a public school, there's a great chance that your kids are being indoctrinated into uh, being told what a boy is, what a girl is. It's okay to be whatever you want to be. But not only that, um, the public school system, especially in California and other states, doesn't have to tell the parents what they're doing with your kids. Now, can you like take us down this path even more? This is what you do. Like, can you dive into that a little bit more and talk us through like that piece?
Yeah, so in California and a number of the states, it's actually part of your state law or your state education policy that educators will immediately have to affirm and endorse and imagine a contrived identity that denies the child sex. As soon as a child professes a different sexual identity, and there's no in fact, they're not permitted to tell the parents unless the minor child, consents to parents being told, and this is a number of the blue states, California being one, Massachusetts, Oregon, Washington,
Yeah.
Illinois, I mean, a number of states. And then in other states, it's, sort of it can be de facto policy because sort of that's just in
What's that
practice
mean?
too. De facto policy is it's not actual a law or regulation, but it's now become sort of the an understanding of this is now the common practice
Mhm.
rules. And what's so troubling about this is that the presumption there's an underlying presumption that parents are potentially dangerous to their own child.
Yes.
They're
Could you
not
imagine teaching having that mindset and teaching kids that your parents aren't safe?
aren't safe. If the
What?
parent doesn't go along with this contrived identity, they're presumed to be unsafe, and that's the justification they give for this is we want to make sure we've created a safe and inclusive environment for students whose parents are not supportive, and and in case they're not supportive at home, we're going to conspire with the child to deceive the parents. So what they do, Jay, is that the parent and the teacher or the administrator will agree to call the child their legal name and their biologically accurate pronouns when they're talking to the parent.
Wow.
And when they're at school, they'll revert back to, the opposite sex name, different pronouns, and whatever other practices they're engaging in to deny this child's sex. Opposite sex, bathrooms, sports, whatever the case may be. And it could be parents, it could be many months. We had a couple of parents that didn't find out about this until close to an entire school year later
Oh my gosh.
that this is happening. And so we had another parent that didn't find out until they were called to the school. This is an actual lawsuit we have in Florida, red state, Florida,
Wow.
where the parents didn't know until they were called to the school because the child had attempted suicide at school
Oh my gosh.
after living a double life for 3 months and meeting privately with the school counselor to support and to endorse this male identity. Now, fortunately, Florida passed the law to make this illegal, what we're talking about. They passed a parental rights law to that would not allow this, but most other states don't have that law.
It's so wild because they are creating this idea in children that one, a child knows what's best for them,
That is correct.
and two, that parents are
Don't.
unsafe and don't know what's best for you.
That's exactly right.
And
And
three,
question your community.
yes, that you that a teacher actually knows what's best and that it's okay to that you have to protect yourself from the world around you and the most intimate people in your life. What a crazy world. What crazy world are we living in? How did this get started? Like, can you talk through like how did we get to this spot?
It was It had been underneath the surface for decades, largely confined to men with fetishes. That was really
Yeah.
it was very outside the mainstream, but just men with sexual fetishes. What really caused this to explode into our culture was the Obama administration. And I don't really take a pol this is not a pol this is
Yeah.
not a matter of politics in the sense of
Republican versus Democrat.
in the sense of trying to favor one party or another. It's just facts. Facts are
Yeah.
stubborn things. So under the Obama administration, the, um, the Department of Education was infiltrated by activists. It's straight and simple. And so activists created a guidance letter that was sent to all the schools throughout the nation saying that their new and updated interpretation of Title IX, I'll explain what Title IX is in just a moment,
Thank you.
is such that, Title IX, in their opinion, now covers gender identity. And so under this new interpretation of Title IX, all schools need to immediately affirm a child's gender identity over their sex and provide all the accommodations that a child's wished for. This wasn't a regulation, it was a Dear Colleague letter, which is a really underhanded way of doing things. And Title IX it is the it was an amendment to the Civil Rights Act that was passed in 1972. That was the purpose of that was to prohibit discrimination on the basis of sex. It was basically to protect women and girls
Right, absolutely,
and our
absolutely.
equal opportunities in education and in sports. But then hijacked by the Obama administration to then champion the cause, the transgender ideology. And that
Wow.
after that, there was about 2000 there were several Dear Colleague letters, but it started in late 2015 and it ended in 2016. Then all of a sudden, 2016, then it just metastasized. It was everywhere. And then under the Obama administration, excuse me, under the Biden administration, they went further. And then issued, uh, they proposed regulations that then they passed. And then they were sued over it and have now been enjoined in court. Those regulations are now not enforceable. But there has
Oh,
been this push by the federal government basically threatening schools that you have to go along with this or you're gonna be on the wrong side of the federal government, candidly, until the Trump administration came along.
yeah. What, I don't know if you're good with saying this, but what has happened since Trump's come in?
I'm totally good at saying this because, again, facts are what they are.
Yeah,
Not opinion. It's
yeah.
not politics. It's just what they are. The Trump administration has done remarkable things to restore our biological understanding of the human creation.
Yeah.
It has championed the created order. He
Mhm.
he has and his administration. So he has issued 4 executive orders. The first one was saying, "It is now the official policy of, the federal government and administration that there are 2 sexes, male and female. And all of our policies, our funding, we will no longer be funding anything differently. That is now our policy throughout the federal government, which
Wow.
applies to hundreds of things, thousands probably. The second was saying that the federal government will no longer fund gender transition, sex destroying body mutilation. That's what it is. It
Yeah,
so distorts the body, it harms the bodies, particularly of adolescents and
yeah.
developing young people, that is sex destroying mutilation. We will no longer be funding this. The third was a order that protects women's sports, girls and women, and says, sports shall be according to biological sex. And then the last one is saying that the federal government will not fund ideological indoctrination in schools, and that was
Yep,
mainly DEI and transgender ideology.
yep.
And this has caused I mean, on a major ground shift in all of this, where now a pushback has begun,
Right.
and it's now all being litigated. There are federal lawsuits. There are many, many federal lawsuits trying to stop these executive orders. I feel quite confident they're going to lose because if it goes to the Supreme Court, the law is on our side. The law and facts and biology are on our
Yes.
side.
Science is on our side.
Science is on our side.
Yes.
But in the meantime, there's 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 still many, many, many school districts, thousands, where they're still doing this in their schools, and then there's child protective services, and we should talk about that.
So, you're a part of basically, you started Maybe explain how you got into this, 'cause I'm still not sure how you jumped in and started going, "Man, I need to change this."
Yeah. So all the things that you read about me, those were actually my former roles as a family law practitioner and a guardian ad
Okay.
litem for children in court. I would defend children in court and the best interests of the child in court. Um, but in that role, I encounter stories about detransitioners, and they were described how they were told that if you just do these things to your body, that all your problems will go away. All
Yeah.
the depression and suicidality and anxiety, it's
Anxiety.
go away. Well, I did all these things, and now I'm a broken human being. My body is a wreck, and none of my problems are gone. In fact, they're worse. So
Yeah.
they detransitioned. So they were telling their stories, and I was reading these in my kitchen table, and I was wrecked. I was absolutely wrecked. I had a God moment. Yes, I'm a stronger believer. I'm a strong believer, a disciple. I'm not merely I am a disciple
Yes.
of the Lord Jesus Christ. And he encountered me. His spirit encountered me, and I just knew that I knew that this was now my life's call to
Wow.
fight this. I did graduate from Yale University with a degree in biology, which gave me a very, very strong
Wow,
foundation.
that's amazing.
Yeah, and actually several years of research, and so I had a very, very strong foundation in science, and then and
So
grad
you do understand a penis and a vagina then?
yeah, and I used to not have to say those words all the time, but yes, um, and, uh and that I had graduated from Harvard Law School, and the only reason I mention these 2 things is that I just recognized that the Lord had a purpose.
Yeah.
Just as he prepared, Daniel or prepared Esther, or whatever the case may be, to walk in the court, legal, and governmental arena and begin to, undo the laws and the practices that were purposely targeting our children.
Yeah.
To teach them you just might be born in the wrong body. God just made a mistake, and it's up to you to be your own God and to fix your mistake and then force everybody else around you to make pretend that you're
Yeah.
something you're not, and then to harm yourself in the process. And turn on your parents, by the way, if they don't agree with you.
Yeah. It's such a wild, indoctrination in and, brainwashing, right? To to take a child and validate validate their fear in the midst of the most vulnerable time in their life, right? If you're insecure, if you don't if you're struggling, um, if you don't feel like you fit in, you're probably something else. You're
That's right.
probably in the wrong body. Man, I'll tell you, I struggled for a long time. I've talked about this a lot when I was a young boy, just with, I would say sexual exploration
Mm,
a lot. I was addicted to masturbation from 10 years old on all the way up until 16. Very, very bad. And had oral sex with a guy friend of mine um, at I think 11 or 12 years old. Lots of exploratory stuff. I had a dad that I told all that stuff to. And I remember when I told my dad about having oral sex with a guy friend of mine. And he said, all he said to me was, all I remember him saying to me, he said more, but all I remember him saying to me is, "Oh, you're just really curious. It's
mm,
not who you are. You don't need to do that anymore." And that was the last time I did that. But to me, like all of my sexual experiences, almost all of them up until 16 when I got a girlfriend were with guys. So, masturbating in the same room, watching pornography together, um, the oral sex that I had, all of that was it was just guys exploring with guys. And if I wouldn't have had a father in my life
mm,
say to me, "You're just curious, right? It's not who you are. It's a temptation, and you don't, this isn't what you need to do." I would have struggled with same sex. I would have struggled with same sex attraction. I would have thought I was a homosexual. I mean, that was a fear at one point when I was a young boy. My dad remembers me saying, I'm afraid I'm a homosexual." When I told him, I don't remember saying that, But if anyone would have planted in me, I just see God's protection on my life, having protected me from that seed that says something's probably wrong with you, instead of my father going, "You're just really curious." And so when I hear about one, I have young kids. I mean, I got 5 kids, and my youngest is 2, and my old 2 and 4, and then I've got older kids, and I'm about to be a grandpa here, um, and so, most of my world revolves around children and protecting children and leading men and helping lead men through sexual addiction, things like that. This is our absolute God-given right, that we would step up and protect our children, that we as parents would be the ones that give identity, that we as parents would be the ones that walk our kids through the hardest seasons of their lives. And by the way, if they chose to make a bad decision, that we would also be there to love them and care for them, and like my parents have with me so many different times. And so I love that you're in the fight, that you're in the middle of the fight, that you're fighting for these kids, not just the parents. You're fighting for the kids, and you're fighting for the parents to be able to nurture and care. Take us through a little bit more. I know that you talked about CPS a little bit, Child Protective Services, and how it's been weaponized against parents as well. Can you talk about
Right,
that?
so we're talking about the weaponization of a variety of institutions. One is the weaponization of language, where we have distorted language. And, I was just did an interview yesterday about trans girls in women's sports, and I said, "Excuse me, let's just stop a second. That is a usurpation of language. This is a male.
Mhm. Wow. Yes.
I'm not cooperating with that. Okay,
Yes.
let's just get the facts straight." We're also talking about the weaponization of the normal angst, puberty angst, that most of
Yes.
the rest of us would have just, maybe, I don't know, you deal with it.
Yeah.
Now we're talking about the weaponization of our institutions, our schools. I mean, education is ubiquitous. It is all our kids get educated. So there's
Yes.
a level of vulnerability there for all our kids. And then you take it to the next level when you're talking about child protective services, because
Mhm.
that's the part of government that carries a sword,
Yeah.
and it carries authority sufficient to actually remove your child from your home. And here's the thing, you can remove your child from public school. There's nowhere to hide from CPS.
Yes. It's
We've
true.
had parents contact us that had been homeschooling their children, and child protective services. Kids nowadays are being on the internet. He here Here's why I really want your audience to dial in and recognize, do not get caught in the falsity that my kids are somehow outside of this, or if you're a minister, our church, our good, we're good, we're conservative, we're strong, Bible believing, we're somehow outside of this, we're not affected. No, because the internet accesses all of all of our kids in one way or the other, and there
Yeah.
are voices that are teaching them how to get picked up by Child Protective Services, what they need to do to get taken out of their own parents' home, what buzzwords to say, what claims to make,
Mm.
how to do just certain amount of harm, but not too much so that it looks like an actual suicide threat,
Wow.
right? And that's what's happening. And I have a case right now in California that I'm flying back and forth on, where a very intelligent, upper middle class, family, it is an immigrant family, where they come from doesn't believe in this sex denial, and their child has been removed from their home, and
Wow.
I'm representing them in juvenile court right now as we speak. And the problem is that even when you begin to win on the law in court, which we are, the child can be so indoctrinated
Yeah.
that the child makes herself impossible to return parents. And
Yeah.
that's a whole other layer in all of this. So I say everywhere I speak, and it's quite a bit, particularly to ministers, the most important thing we can do is to inoculate our children and fortify them such that they don't go down this rabbit hole. Because once CBS has taken a child, it's many, many months of the worst parental agony that you can possibly imagine, other than your child actually dying.
Yeah, 100%. I could only imagine. What can parents do and what can churches do to help equip parents and to help yeah, to help jump into this fight?
So I want to talk to you about some resources we've created and what you can do and what you should do and why. Why is always start with a why. Because at at the end of the day, this is an ideology. It's not just about children. There is a broader agenda. They are using the vulnerability of children in order to normalize a world view, a belief system. The children are pawns. I hate to put
Yeah,
it, but
it's
they're
true.
being used to because they're innocent and they're so genuine and they're so authentic. And who can resist what a child? That's what a child feels and believes, and it's hard to resist that as compassionate parents. But they're using our children to normalize the idea that mankind is not made male and female. The idea the belief system, I call it a quasi-religion, quite frankly, that believes that the human species exists on a continuum of infinite number of genders that you yourself can define for yourself. It is supplanting Almighty God, the creator of heaven and earth, with humans as God.
Mm,
When
yes.
and then in some states, then it uses the force of government and then to force things upon the citizens. And if we hadn't already begun to push back, it would begin to force things on people of faith and even on churches,
Yeah,
like opening up your bathrooms to people of the opposite sex because you're a public accommodation. Okay.
yeah,
All right. So when we understand how insidious this is and how there's no avoiding it, then we realize, okay, I need to understand it. And I need to then equip myself, my church, my people, my parents, my sheep with knowing how to protect your own children, and knowing how to be salt and light, how to be a voice of truth in your community so that all the other vulnerable families and children who would be susceptible to this thing have a voice of truth. I was just reading this morning, Jason, just this morning. Thank you, God. In John, I believe it's chapter 18, where Jesus said, I came to stand, my translation, to stand for truth, to be
yeah.
the truth.
Yep.
Okay? It's
I love
John
it.
18. So if Jesus our Lord did, then that is our assignment. And if we don't stand for the truth in our community, in our school boards, in our legislatures, our laws, our practices, our schools, everywhere, if we don't, then the lie will overtake the vulnerable. And that's
Yeah,
people within your own community, your own church. So you need to be equipped to understand this thing. You need to understand your rights. And so let me just get into the
yeah,
resource, and I know you have
yeah,
a
do
graph.
it.
When we for many years we fought this in court and we fought this with legislation and speaking and I just felt like the Holy Spirit said about a year ago, it's time that my churches are equipped.
Mm,
And so I felt led to bring together a team of experts on the various different aspects of this ideology that's attacking us, the medical, the educational, the ministerial, parents' rights, schools, all that. And we created a 99-page church transgender resource guide with
wow.
everything we could possibly think. And frankly, we had more. We had to cut it out. So I think Jay has a graphic that you can see there, and you'll see the QR code. But the first part will teach you what is this agenda,
Yep.
what's happening in schools, what's happening on the internet, what's happening with how language is being absolutely contorted and used to control um, the medical aspects, etc. Then there's the second section is for church leaders, pastors, apostles. How do you protect your own church legally?
Mm, it's great.
Your policies, your spaces, your documentation, and then how do you minister? How do you speak on this?
Mhm.
Um, How do you minister to gender dysphoric people that come into your midst? How do you minister to parents whose child is now gender dysphoric and they've got a crisis on their hands? How do you inoculate your kids? The third section is, let's see, the third section is now geared directly towards parents. Much more now, not from a pastoral standpoint, but from a parental standpoint. How do you protect your kids? How do you inoculate them? How do you reach them if they have already been pulled into the denial of their sex?
Mm,
It's really, really quite difficult. And all of that. And then the final section is written towards the young people themselves. How do you protect your own heart? Because your
yeah.
parents can be there all day long. How do you help protect your peers? And etcetera. And then there's a whole section in the back about how do you deal with child protective services if they get involved with you. That's really important.
Yeah.
There's a section about how do you deal with schools and assert your rights. And then, Jason, we created training all around this. We have a day-long training now that a team of us is willing to come out to your church and provide that now that gets into dialogue with you and walks through how to equip your church, your leaders, your high-level volunteers, your parents, how to then implement the information that we've given you so that it now becomes a weapon in your hands. You're now equipped to actually act and have some confidence.
Man, I love this so much, Vernadette. I mean, there's a really great quote that we've all heard before, and it says, "All evil needs in order to thrive is for good people to do nothing." And I really think one of the big challenges is, especially that came out of 2020, is when people started to get canceled, and there was so much control, um, from the other side. Honestly, the other side, darkness. There was so much control.
Mm.
Churches were being canceled, people were being canceled, and so much confusion about what can I do? What can I say? How can I help? What is not what's right, but how do I stand up for what is right? And so, what I love is that massive wave of control and manipulation and darkness and the weaponization. In my mind, um, the biggest blow was dealt in those 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24. And it's been awesome because I'm now seeing people, well, even when Elon bought X,
Oh, yes.
you saw a shift. And then
Yes.
even, of course, this year Zuckerberg's come out and got ahead of Trump being in president, whatever. But you're starting to see people be able to go, hold on one sec. I do have a voice. You can't cancel me. I'm not afraid of you. I am going to stand up for justice. We are going to do what's right. We are going to have a voice for our kids. And also, these people really do matter. The LGBTQ community are
Yeah.
people that we love, that God loves. I mean, some of them are my friends. I have friends that are struggling, that need help. And I've worked with lots and lots of peoples that are struggling. The battle is not with the individual. And so what I love is that you're giving real practical tools that as a leader is my responsibility to protect, to provide, to promote, to bring health into my community. And so if you're a pastor, if you're a parent on here, if you're a child and you're going, man, I really want some help. I really want to understand more about what my rights are, about how to fight back, about how to stand up. 100%. You can look at our show notes. So we'll have information there as well on how to connect with Vernadette and her team as well, just so that you guys know too. We have a whole movement at Bethel called the Changed Movement. And we can put some, Dave, remind me to my producer, Dave, we need to put some notes in there because if you're struggling, if you're listening to this and you're struggling with homosexuality, same sex attraction, anything like that, we've seen so many people get healed. Their stories are incredible. Like we actually have a whole entire book that's called Changed, and it's stories and stories and stories of people who had completely transitioned, people that were living the LGBTQ lifestyle, and God touched them. They got emotionally, mentally, even physically restored. And I just know how devastating and challenging for everyone involved. This isn't just for parents. Kids are suffering, even teachers. I know this. My sister is a principal at a public school, and she's an incredible, incredible woman. This is not an easy issue for anyone involved.
Isn't.
And so what you're doing, Vernadette, you're on the front lines, is incredible. Thank you so much for coming, for equipping, for sharing your story with us. Thank you for being in the fight. It means so much.
Oh, thank you, Jay. I'll just say I'll take 10 seconds to say we're at a wonderful place for people to rise up because
Yeah,
we have a leadership now in our federal government that has begun the pushback and now outlets to get to raise our voice. I think the Lord knew this time would come, that the time of the turning of tides. And so with that lead going before us, I would say people of faith rise up, pastors, leaders,
yes,
shepherds, parents. It's the way is being paved. Let's rise up, avail yourself of our resources, obviously changed as well. And I believe this is a God ordained moment to
it really
press.
is.
That's the advantage.
It really is. Bernadette, thank you so much. Guys, hopefully you enjoyed this week's podcast. If you know someone who needs this information, please share it with them. Otherwise, have an incredible week out there. Stay brave, men. Hey, BraveCo men. Hopefully you loved this week's episode. Listen, if you have not subscribed to our podcast, you are already behind. Go ahead and click right here to subscribe to our podcast. And if you have not watched last week's episode, you can click right here and watch last week's episode. And listen, if you want to upgrade your wardrobe, you can check out some of our new hats that we have in stock and all our other swag. Go to braveco.org and you can look at our store there. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.